What's up, George? Bella, what's up? This damn dog. I knew as soon as we start, my dog was going to jump up.
That's all right. I'm not going to give her anything.
No. Oh,
So I assumed you were going to eat the same thing as me, but is any of that something you don't eat?
no, I can go for it.
It's the basic chicken, black bean, brown rice. It's what I get all the time.
Yes. It is a nice, cool day today, actually. I thought it was going to be warmer. See, I haven't had Chipotle, like I was telling you before, I haven't had Chipotle in years. I'm trying to remember. When was the last time I had it?
Any reason?
You know what? There wasn't a real reason. I guess I was just stuck on eating other things. Probably other trashier places.
It gives you the illusion that it's healthy. I don't know, healthier. Like say, I think McDonald's owns them, but it seems fresh-ish. If you look at their menu, it's like however many calories, you get a bowl, a bunch of protein, whatever, a lot of salt probably, but
Yeah.
it's in my rotation of like I was telling you, if there's nowhere else I want to eat, if I can't decide on where to eat, I don't want to have waiters wait on me. I usually don't. I don't like the waiter thing anyway. So just a quick, you get your food, you sit down, eat as much as you want, or you can just leave with it. Quick, or it takes a lot of time. I don't know. So I assumed, we were going to get Greek food, but it's very fatty and it usually upsets my stomach anyways.
Oh, okay.
So it worked out for me. But I don't want to eat too much as we're talking and I make disgusting slurping sounds. So I apologize.
That is the nature of this, someone told me you have to get used to the slurping noises on microphone if you're going to do something like this. So.
All right.
So obviously we're here in my apartment, which means you're local to New Jersey. Have you always lived in Jersey, or?
Yes.
Yes.
My whole life. No, I've never. No, I briefly lived in Queens when I was going to school.
Okay.
But I didn't like it there, and I didn't want to go to school anymore, so I moved back to Jersey, and I dropped out of school. So, aside from half a year to a year, I don't remember how long I lived there. Yeah, New Jersey my whole life. Northern New Jersey, because all the biomes are very different,
Right.
If I said I was from South Jersey, I would be I imagine my disposition would be different. People from up where we are, you've got the New York fast-thinking, fast-talking attitude with none of the, I don't know. If you go down to, say, the shore, those people have a little bit more of a rural, even though it's not really rural.
Yeah.
If you go near Camden, you're just going to get psychos. And then up northwest is, with the banjo. I'm just joking, but it's despite being a small state, I think it's funny that there are so many different kinds of, you can call it biomes.
Yeah.
How about you? I forgot if I asked last time.
So it's funny because I just tell people I'm from Jersey, but I really am because I've lived here the longest. I think we moved to New Jersey when I was going into 8th grade. But we had lived in 3 prior states.
Okay.
And then we moved a bit within those states. So that's why I'm always like, well, I've lived in a bunch of places, but I've lived in Jersey basically since then. I left for about a year to Tennessee to live in Nashville. And I liked it out there.
I had friends that moved to Nashville from up here, and I really liked it there.
Yeah.
I don't know, it feels like New Jersey, I guess, without any beach. Like, it has the same mountains, woods, similar climate, it feels like.
Yeah. Except country music stations.
Yeah, I suppose so. I mean, they were jokingly calling it Nash Vegas. There's a lot of country stuff. There's a big music scene there, apparently, or something like that. But I guess Nashville specifically would feel like New Jersey because it's relatively blue, but you're surrounded by red.
Yeah.
So I don't know what that means, but it would feel like New Jersey, I guess. Was it recent though you were down there?
So this was when I was like 21. So about like 17 years ago. Okay. Jesus Christ, I'm getting old.
Well, that's around the time. No, I visited my friends around that time too. That's funny. I bet we passed each other and we didn't know.
But you know what? They did a lot of development in Nashville.
Yeah, they did.
Because I remember going back, I coincidentally worked for a company that was headquartered in Nashville, and they took me out there a couple times. I was like, this didn't exist. This didn't exist. Like, just so many things were just completely new.
Recently?
This was maybe like 4 or 5 years ago, I guess now, that I worked for them. Excuse me. But it was fascinating how much Nashville grew. As what's even more fascinating is stuff like the Daily Wire choosing Nashville to be the hub.
I thought they were in Florida too.
Are they in Florida too?
Isn't Shapiro and those people, they live in Florida? Or they maybe broadcast from Florida, but their headquarters is in Nashville?
Possibly. Like, I believe like Candace Owens is in, I mean, she's part of Daily Wire, but I believe she's in Nashville.
Okay.
But it's just, it's interesting because back in the day, it didn't seem like Nashville was much of anything besides the stereotypical, music city.
When we first
country music.
visited, like say 20 years ago?
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm just asking. I don't know. I remember it being under development when I was there. A lot of people were moving. Post 9/11, a lot of people were leaving the north, so I heard, and moving down there. So that's where I'm assuming, I'm digging this out of my butt, a lot of money came into the state because everybody was leaving the north and they wanted to go south, but not too far south.
Yeah.
That's the story I got anyways. Because a house up here costs, let's say, a certain amount. You can buy a house for the same amount of money down there and you get like triple the property, triple the square footage, at least at the time.
Yeah. Now, not so much.
No, now everyone knows that that's the hot spot. There are some places where I was looking up just out of curiosity, certain districts around Nashville where you can get a house for the same amount here. Mansions, mini mansions down there still, but I don't know. It's the same story no matter where you go. But I was always like fantasizing if I wanted to move away from this area, our money here would travel a lot further down there.
Right.
But I don't know if you get much of a trade-off. Like, I can't imagine not being around the beach. That would be hard for me. But
I can live without the beach. I rarely go, anyways. And to sound stereotypical, I can't swim. So
the boardwalk and the flavor, the seagulls. You have no, you don't care.
I've never been a huge fan of our shore. I felt like, well, there's a couple secret places that have a boardwalk. If you just want the scenery, there's no tourists or anything like that. But the stereotypical like Wildwood and Seaside, those places, it's like, oh man, I want to get out of here as soon as I can.
I remember Seaside being pretty gross. I don't know if anyone listening is going to care, but I remember I think 2 years ago I went, and it had a flavor of a party town.
Yeah.
Where like Jersey Shore-ish, like tough guys walking around, and like we just kind of got the feeling that it wasn't mellow. And at least Wildwood Crest down there, Cape May and stuff, feels more family-ish, or it felt last time I went. I don't want to have to deal with like drunk people walking around like being loud and stuff. I just want like a chilled, people on bikes, relaxing. But I get nostalgic for it. I would miss it, I guess. But if I had the opportunity, I would probably go down. I like Nashville. I used to have friends down there. I don't know if they're still there. But I don't know. It's not up to me anyways. We were talking about that earlier.
Yeah.
It's not a bad area to live in up here. I went to High Point State Park not long ago, and I didn't know that existed. Up on the very tip, northwest tip of New Jersey, you get to see like Pennsylvania, New York and stuff, and it's very quiet there. Too quiet for me.
Yeah.
But that's only, I don't want to say where we are exactly, but like it's not far from where we are anyways. It feels like a completely different state.
Yeah.
That's just funny. But we are a very dense state anyhow. So, I don't know, depending if you want to be surrounded by pine barrens, you can go down. I don't know why you would live down there.
I don't know either.
Maybe it's cheap property, I don't know. And still be near the action, I suppose. I mean, I grew up watching like the Kevin Smith movies and whatnot,
Yeah.
and that seemed like a completely different state. But it turned out it was only like a short drive from where I used to live growing up. And then they would go to New York and stuff in the movies. I'm like, wait, where's this mystical area? Red Bank, New Jersey? Where is that? And yeah, I drove past it. I went to their shop. Anyway, this has nothing to do with anything I'm sure you want to talk about. So.
No, it's all good. So, obviously, you know I'm a writer, but I'm a late to the game writer. I've only been writing for the past few years. But I was just curious, like, how long ago did you know or decide that you wanted to be an artist?
You know, I don't even call myself an artist now. It's like, it's something you do in school when you're young, just fooling around, drawing cartoons to make your friends laugh. Like, at the lunch table or something. And I just never stopped. So when it came time around high school, late high school, and we were talking about like, where are you going to college? What are you going to study? A lot of people say they don't know. But I assumed like, what's the job for me? What am I going to do with the rest of my life? What's the only thing I'm decent at? I guess drawing. And I really enjoyed writing as just a fun thing that I used to do. So I never really decided I wanted to become a professional at it because I didn't know what's the avenue. Like you would ask your student counselor or something, how do I become a professional comic artist? He's like, I don't know. Why don't you go to this school over here in the city? And so I'm like, okay, I'll apply to that school, not knowing anything about how any of this works.
Right.
And I go to an art school in New York for like a year. And I realized how expensive it was going to be. And there was a commute. I couldn't live there. So I had to take the bus hour and a half every day. And it took forever. Or I would take the subway. I lived in Queens, like I mentioned. And it just... the training was fun, but then I realized I could just train myself at home and train myself. And I just wanted to apply to some comics company. Like here in the States, we have DC, Marvel, Dark Horse, Image. At the time, there was Oni Press, was on its way up. They did Scott Pilgrim. But I was like, okay, so I guess this is going to be my thing. I'm going to try to get my comics published. It sort of worked for a little while. When I was 21, I had my first book published. But then they went out of business around 2007-8 during the recession. And a bunch of businesses went out of business. And comics, in general, they weren't hiring at the time. So I've been indie my whole career almost. And I only, quote, blew up in the past few years. I'm going to say 2018, 19. So my whole career has just been me doodling for fun, pretty much. And I never have been able to do it professionally until maybe I would even argue this past year. Like I did, there's a project I'm working on now called Ghost of the Badlands, which is with a writer, YouTuber named Razorfist. And he wrote it and I did the campaign for it and it got funded very nicely. And I would say that's the first time I really got like, since my first book when I was 21, that's the first book that really got like funded well, and I can really work on it as hard as I can spend as much time drawing it as I want to.
Right.
So am I a pro even? Maybe not yet. When the book comes out and if people like it, then I could say I'm a pro. But I'm still, can I curse?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
I'm still a shit poster on the internet. But as far as anyone's concerned, like I draw whatever people know me for now, I guess on Twitter and whatever, political strips, current event strips. I've never made that much money off it. I'm just a guy doodling in his office. And so I don't know how to answer, like, how do you do it professionally? I don't know. I would love to ask a professional, how do you do it? I don't know. But the indie thing is working out well enough now. I got booted off Patreon in December. And now I'm waiting for Twitter to like do their subscription thing. So maybe I can make a few bucks a month doing that. That's the plan anyways. Or I'll just get kicked off. I don't think I'll get kicked off Twitter under the new administration.
Let's hope not.
Maybe Instagram.
Oh, yeah.
But I've learned the rules. I've gotten suspended a couple times, or I've had posts removed. But Patreon's the only thing that really like just nuked my No, they did a thing where they froze my account. I couldn't receive money, and they said you have to delete these posts.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the line in the sand, the classic Peterson, like you can't censor yourself or your toast as an artist or a creative. So I said, I guess I'm not going to earn any money anymore, so that sucks. So that was hard.
What was their reasoning? I mean, if they even give a reasoning, what's their reasoning for wanting you to delete those specific ones?
I didn't even check those because I had been getting nerfed on Twitter and Instagram for... I drew one strip where the punchline was Hitler saying a Sesame Street line on Instagram. I think it was something like something about the color of your skin and that makes people different. Some dad was talking to his son about skin color makes us who you are, something like that. But it sounded really sketch if you replace the dad with Hitler.
Right.
So that was the punchline. And that you can't even draw Hitler on Instagram, I learned. So I had to take that down. On Twitter, I had a couple of grooming jokes where I got suspended for 7 days each. And then Patreon, I made lots of jokes about like Democrats or trans stuff, and where the punchline is something, the punchline is, offensive to certain people, I suppose. And so anyway, they said I can't receive money until I censor myself. And sometimes, I suppose, to keep your street cred with your readers, you have to take a hit, I suppose, financially. Because if you say I want the money, but I'm going to now censor myself, you're not cool anymore, I think. So luckily I had a couple of bucks saved up and I was living off my savings for a little while, and it turned out okay.
Yeah.
But man, it was tight for a little while. Yeah.
It's very interesting because it's like there's a fine line between self-censoring, but yet still going towards like your goal. So it's funny you said like Twitter has its own rules, and as people who kind of like skate the edge a little bit.
Yeah.
You know what the rules are, and you just learn like, okay, I'm not going to cross this line here. I can cross it elsewhere, but not here.
Yeah.
And I think there are a lot of people who are just like, I want to be able to just do whatever and cross the line. I'm like, okay. And then they get upset when they get nuked.
Yeah.
So it's kind of like do we self-censor, or at least I'll speak for myself. Do I self-censor? A little bit. But I kind of feel like I'd rather not say something so I have longevity than to say something one time and lose out gaining followers or gaining people to hear my message, hear what I have to say. And then there's platforms like Substack, for writers like me, where I'm like, I can go on Substack and say what I want to say, and people can just go there and see it. So I always try to find some sort of balance with censorship. The part that is a problem is when you don't know what the rules are, or they change it every so often, or it's just highly subjective.
Yeah.
At least now with new Twitter or X.
Yeah.
At least now with X.
We got to do this.
We got to do this.
The X-Men power.
X/Wakanda forever. At least with that, it seems to be less subjective. It seems to be more like there's a clear line. Like if you cross it, you cross it.
You'll probably have you'll get, what do they call it? D-ranked? No. You'll be less visible, I suppose, depending on your followers and how they respond to your tweets. But I haven't heard many stories of people. You'll get the occasional person gets like his account suspended. Like, who's that guy? Dom Lucari? What's his name?
Oh, Dom Lucari? Yeah, I never actually say that.
Yeah. He got suspended randomly, and he got his account back like the next day because some guy at Twitter working behind the scenes was like, oh, you can't post whatever he posted. Usually, like, you'll hear a story about, oh, so-and-so got suspended, and we don't know why, and then Elon flies in and says, oh, no, unsuspend him. And that's where the new line is. But I've heard some pretty edgy stuff lately, and those people don't get suspended.
Right.
I think there's a sort of balkanization happening on Twitter, X, whatever, where I don't even see a lot of lefty posts anymore. I'll get the occasional Stephen King or a bunch of clowns saying, who was it, Rob Reiner the other day. I don't know why I'm seeing them, but like I think the more people you interact with, that's going to be your social network on Twitter. And I think there's just going to be a sort of a barrier between if you don't interact with anyone on the left, you're just not going to see their tweets anymore, and vice versa. As far as self-censoring goes, the argument can be made for creatives where if you have borders that you can't cross, it's like that's your sandbox. You can't go out of the sandbox. And now you have to get creative of how to deliver edgy jokes. You're leaning over the edge, but you're not falling over the edge. Yeah. So even South Park being on TV and they can't say certain curse words or they can't do certain jokes, part of the funny humor is, oh, how far can they push it without going... so that's a challenge, a creative challenge. I don't feel like I've self-censored too much. There's the occasional edgy joke where I'm like, oh, is this going to get me in trouble? And maybe it does in the algorithm, but I still have my account somehow.
Yeah.
I've never really felt like, what was it? No, I haven't gone so... I tell myself, what would South Park do? And if South Park would do the joke, I do it. Because I assume that's the line. On Twitter anyways. Because I don't want to be offensive for the sake of being offensive. I want to make a joke that's actually funny. Not shocking, but actually funny. And sometimes I just, maybe the joke doesn't land and it's dumb. And then I say, okay, I'll try better next time.
But it's funny you mentioned like the sandbox and how part of the fun is that there is censorship and trying to figure out creative ways while there is censorship.
Yeah.
It reminds me of Howard Stern.
Okay.
I don't know. Did you ever listen to Howard Stern, like when he was on the radio?
When I was older, not when I was... Okay. When he was hot, I wasn't allowed to listen to him.
Gotcha. What's so funny? My mom got me into Howard Stern.
That's funny. When you were younger?
Yeah, I was a teenager. My mom would listen to him, and then I would listen to him. I would watch him on E! But part of the fun was that he has this stupid, the FCC, with all these rules, and he can't say and do certain things. He's getting dinged every so often.
Yeah.
Am I messing up? Is it FCC? I don't know. Whichever.
Federal, whatever. Communication.
Is it communication?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I know what you mean.
You know what I mean.
This is before he went to Sirius.
Before he went to Sirius, right.
Right. Yeah.
So he would use certain words, and he would play around with like really like raunchy stuff. But then when he went over to Sirius and you listen, it took that fun away.
I know exactly what you mean.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because then now you hear him curse, and you're like, that's not the same. Or you hear like, oh, it's overt, and it's like, but part of the fun was like it's like having sex with your girlfriend, your parents next door. It's
You're
like
not wrong.
It's like they're right there, but
there's a certain. I mean, we're being crass, but there is a certain heightened horror / excitement to the. Not only are you having sex, which is awesome, but now you're, what if we get caught? We got to be quiet.
Yeah.
That's extra exciting, I guess. Your heart's going extra hard. But you're right. You're actually touching on something I don't think about very often. The essence of excitement or comedy or anything maybe is pushing the line. It's like, what's going to happen? Anything can happen. And that's when your imagination starts going wild. And you're more engaged with the joke. Whereas if they can do anything, it's like, that's all there is to it. Kind of like, to use nudity and sex, like you were saying, if you're an art student and you're in a class with nude models in front of you, it's not sexy anymore. Because now you're in a clinical, like studious setting, and it's like, okay, I'm here to learn now. And that's fine, but there's no excitement anymore because it's not forbidden anymore. In fact, it's kind of bland and expected. Maybe something like that.
That reminds me of my dog is in the way. That reminds me of when I went to Amsterdam. Hey, when I went to Amsterdam, I realized like in the red light district, it's kind of bland. And from like, from here, you're like, oh, prostitution is illegal. And oh my God.
With the windows and everything?
Yeah, with the windows. And so when you go over there and it's legal, you realize like how bland it is because it's legal. It's very matter of fact. Like the prostitutes are independent contractors. They pay rent.
Window space.
Exactly. You have window space and there's a room behind them. You would watch men go up and negotiate prices. It's all very like matter of fact, and it's kind of bland because of it. Same thing with the drugs. You can buy weed and stuff like that around there, but it's kind of like, yeah, but you just went in and paid with your credit card, like you just went into Walgreens. It's kind of bland. It's not as exciting as people might think.
I think we're touching on something kind of profound.
Yeah.
If I think about it some more, like I would then assume that somebody from Amsterdam, once they're bored of something that's pushing the edge of like what's the limits of human pleasure or something, they would start to crave the next thing. But what else is there besides that? I don't know because I don't imbibe drugs or prostitutes, but I imagine like whatever the next step after that is.
I know what the next step is because they have it there and it's equally bland. Live sex shows.
And drugs at the same time.
Yes.
No. But like, is that, I'm just speculating, is that as you get older and you've been to your 700th sex show or whatever, you're just kind of like, what more is there to life than this? Or do you just find satisfaction in it? I don't know. In America, obviously, we don't have that stuff unless you go to Vegas, I suppose. But being a sort of, we used to call them straight edge back in my high school days. I'm a straight edge type of person. Just the thought of doing marijuana or something like to me is like, oh, I couldn't even imagine doing that. That'd be so, I would ruin my life. I can't do that.
Yeah.
And but I suppose society needs to decide where the barriers are and what happens when you push the barriers. And then we're seeing the far left in America pushing further and further, not only barriers here in the States, but barriers, say, internationally. And where's the line? Why are they pushing it so far? I would assume they're bored. Change for change's sake.
I have a different conclusion.
Please.
I think they're purposeless.
So they need a mission?
Yes.
So they're going after change, but that's the goal. They're mixing it up just for the sake of it.
So I think it's two things. We'll use like a demographic of young people. We'll just say young people.
Sure.
I think a lot of young people, for one, they're young, they're inexperienced. And what are they exposed to? So they're exposed to social media, so they're exposed to trends. And, they may be more exposed to, let's just say, like left-leaning stuff, maybe liberal stuff, because liberals are more so in control of culture and media, exactly.
Well, we grew up with MTV and all that stuff.
Yes. In some ways, it was, you would make me go down this wormhole of dissecting the past past TV that we had and how liberal it was. I guess in some ways it was kind of liberal. But what we're dealing with is to me, is not liberal. It's more progressive.
Okay.
It's different. But I think the young people they're exposed to different things and they're exposed to a lot of information and a lot of negativity.
Well, it's interactive now.
Right. It's interactive. And now I think the difference between like us watching television, turning on the news years ago, was that we were just being informed as to what's going on, but now they're being encouraged to be part of the movement.
Yeah.
To do something. Tweet this hashtag, donate this money to this organization. And the reason they're doing is because they've been hit with the propaganda that there's something wrong, and they need to always get involved. So I think for a lot of young people who lean in that direction, who are leftist or progressive, I think for a lot of them, they truly just believe that something is wrong. And now they've been given a mission to fulfill it.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the other side where I think some of the people who are progressives are survivors of trauma, childhood trauma especially. Like, I think many feminists are survivors of some sort of like physical assault.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
I don't know.
And now they have an ideology that tells them it wasn't just that guy, it's all men or majority of men or whatever they want to line it up as.
Whatever makes them feel safe, I suppose.
Yeah.
If they're always on attack, then they won't be forced to defend themselves. I understand why they're doing it. I wouldn't stop them. The problem is what happens when somebody who wants to feel excessively safe, like take vaccines and germs. No, let's just say a germ person. I'm going outside right now and I'm scared of germs, so I don't want anyone coming within X feet of me. I just went to the mall to pick up the food. There's people all around me, there's people everywhere, and it's like, no, get away from me. You have to wear a mask, sir. I don't feel safe around you. Stop breathing. Stop touching my food. The problem is when my phobias start affecting other people.
Yeah.
I don't blame the person for having fears of, say, someone grows up and they're afraid of men, and they have good reason to be. It's not their fault. But now they're pushing their fear on others, where it's like, so now men have to apologize for being men.
Right.
It's silly. It's not necessary. But look at the germ thing also. I think it's connected. There's a similar brain circuit to being afraid of germs, to being afraid of memes in the sense of like thought pathogens. Hey, it's that Christian over there. Let's go get them to get arrested or something because they're preaching the Bible. And that makes me feel uncomfortable and scared because that means they're judging me, whether they are or they're not. But maybe there was some preachy, jerky church people when they were younger that said you can't have sex when you're younger and you're a sinner, you're a dirty whore or something like that, and they made them feel bad about themselves. So Christians can push it too far. Religious people, yeah. And that's the point. And anybody can push their ideology too far. And now the left is learning, oh, we can be obnoxious too. Why doesn't anyone like me? Oh, it's because I'm a jerk? No, it's the world that's the problem.
Right.
Well, now you're going to learn, just like the Christians learn and everybody else learn. And round society goes, I suppose. Where just being obnoxious makes people not want to hang out with you. Whereas before I was just neutral. I didn't care. I never thought about this stuff, this leftist stuff they're pushing. There are books now where the right is saying, hey, this is obscene material. It shouldn't be in libraries or whatever. That I read when I was younger, and I just read them and I'm like, oh, this is kind of a cool book. But now they're drawing attention to it, and it's turning into like they're fighting for the sake of fighting because they have nothing else to do.
Yeah, there's that, and I've written about this a little bit, where, all right, because I've seen like how this has happened in like phases. So let's say like from the pandemic basically activated a whole bunch of people who were on the sidelines and brought a lot of people into the anti-woke movement. And then the anti-woke movement, I think for a lot of people was just like, oh, we have like a lot of shared values in common, things like that. But as time has gone on, I think a lot of people are realizing like, no, we don't really have that much in common. So I'm starting to see like this like fracturing a little bit of the anti-woke stuff, because what's happened is I think there are so many people who just fell in love with fighting just to fight. And they're looking for the boogeyman in everything.
Yeah.
When there are specific battles you should be fighting, and then there are battles that are useless, kind of pointless. Like the whole Dylan Mulvaney thing in Bud Light. I know conservatives love that, but I'm like, but is that the win? Is like, what does that actually do? It's
a flex for them. It's the first time in a while that the right has been able to say, look, we boycotted a company and we won. So of course they're going to keep pushing.
Right.
Back in the day, you know, there was so many, or they tried to go after Target and stuff for all the rainbow stuff, rainbow clothes and whatever. So of course it would excite the right to say, hey, look, we actually did something and it worked for once.
Right.
Whereas the left is used to boycotting and making lots of noise and forcing companies to back down. So the right is now discovering with Bud Light and stuff like that. But I don't think they're even thinking about it that far, the common person. Mm-hmm. It's more like I see Dylan Mulvaney as the mascot of this company and I'm disgusted and I don't want... I don't know. It's like the Marlboro Man. When I smoke a Marlboro, I think about how cool the Marlboro Man is. So if I'm going to drink a Bud Light, I'm now thinking about Dylan Mulvaney. And now I don't feel cool anymore. I think that's as far as the common person thinks about it.
You know what's interesting? I don't think if it wasn't for, granted, I'm on Twitter, but I think if it wasn't for Twitter, I would have no idea who Dylan Mulvaney is. I would have no idea. Like,
yeah.
I was saying, because I don't really watch like television often, but if it wasn't for like right-wing Twitter, I would have no idea that the Barbie movie was a thing. And I just find that interesting that, you know, sometimes you're complaining about something, but you're actually kind of promoting it. And like, where's that line of like promotion versus, you know, calling something out?
Mm-hmm. Well, even Hollywood uses, I call it outrage marketing, where I'm going to intentionally piss you off so that you talk about it online and have all your friends talk about it. Dog agrees. So that...
Relax.
Hey, can you imagine this disgusting thing I saw on TV? And then everyone's talking about it. Like, just today I was complaining. This is so stupid. I went to Barnes & Noble this morning, and I'm looking at Aesop's Fables, and I see books like The Fox and the Cock, or The Ass and His Master. And I posted images of this, and I'm like, this is so profane. How can you be giving this to kids as a joke? And some guy sends me some pictures of like genderqueer and drawings of like sexual acts and stuff. And they're like, no, this is the disgusting stuff. I'm like, you just posted it. Why are you sharing it with me? I don't need to know these books exist. I'm not interested. And I think if there's rainbow young people who are going to access these books anyway, they're going to find them. Mm-hmm. But now, because you're talking about it and trying to ban it, but they're not trying to ban it, but that's the reversal. Mm-hmm. I see it featured in Barnes & Noble. Like, hey, this book almost got banned. Be sure to buy this for your kids. And now, by complaining about it, it's the Streisand effect. People know that these things exist, but the people who win, I call them culture war profiteers, if you'll forgive me. And I guess I'm one of them too, but that's a different argument, I suppose. If I'm going to bring up topics that are obscene, that I find obscene, and I'm going to talk about them for the sake of my show, my content is complaining about things that I find objectionable. Now my audience knows about it, and they're complaining about it. And the people who profit from it is me, the complainer, and the publishers. Mm-hmm. And whoever wants to create content online. So, depends on your goals. If you're a right-wing John Smith who just wants to complain about culture, I suppose you can complain about anything you want. But if your goal is to have as little reach as possible for objectionable material, unfortunately, saying nothing is probably the best move. I don't know how you can stop a publisher from making more of these books. I grew up around those kids, the artsy-fartsy leftist kids, and we just complained about whatever kids complained about back in the day. Like, we watched South Park, I mentioned, rated R movies, whatever. Everybody's talking about relationships and whatever. Kids are going to talk about whatever they're going to talk about. Mm-hmm. And they're going to find objectionable material, whether it's in the school library or not. But when you uplift it and talk about it in public space too much, now you're giving them oxygen. Maybe they're doing it on purpose. I don't know.
Yeah, it's a weird line because, for example, if there is an objectionable book that's in a school and that particular community doesn't like it, I'm all for going to the school board. I'm all for asking for it to be removed, that kind of thing. Like, we wouldn't want Playboy in school,
No.
right? So that's where, like, when people like banning books, I'm like, there's certain books that...
And the books they're trying to get rid of, they're very objectionable. I agree.
Right, they're very graphic.
Yeah.
You know, they can't show it on television.
or even talk about it in the committee meetings.
Right.
When someone pulls it up, it's like, hey, you can't bring that in here.
Yeah. It was like...
Then why is it in the school for the kids? I get
Right.
it. I'm not sure if the approach is it working? I don't know.
I think it's debatable. It's hard to say if it's working or if it's not.
I think more parents, right-leaning parents, need to run for the councils,
Yeah.
get on the councils. Don't just complain to a fully left-leaning council who's picking these books, or the teachers who are teaching this material. Don't just say, hey, teacher, don't do that. Don't teach that material, okay? And they're still hired. They're still working there. Why don't you become a teacher and teach? They don't want to do that. So you're complaining to the left, who's still in power at the end of this, and all they're doing is what the Republican House, whatever they've been doing, is I'm going to write you a strongly worded letter, and I'm going to tweet at you if you don't watch out.
Yeah.
Oh no. Anything but that.
Yeah, so there's the action part of it.
Yeah.
The action part, I think, is missing unless it's easy. But what I will say is that there are a lot of people who are running for school boards. There are a lot of people who are being more involved in their child's lives. You know, and I'll include myself in that because I pulled my son out of school because of things going on at his school. Nothing gender related, but it was just a shitty school.
Well, homeschool is a good option.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's happier, and and he's good. And I think with everything going on, just speaking personally, with everything going on with COVID, the lockdowns, and all this other stuff, and I think it placed my son's education and his happiness in school, which wasn't very good. Like when COVID hit, that was supposed to be his freshman year in high school. Mm-hmm. And so his entry into school is actually sophomore year. So everything was very tumultuous for him. And it put myself in a position to step up even more when it came to his education and at least trying to help advance it.
Yeah.
But just getting more involved. I think a lot of parents just assumed that everything was good in school until COVID.
Or hoped.
The teacher's going to do their job and so on and so forth. But then if something happens, then I get involved. But the reality is that's not the case. A lot of schools were teaching some very sketchy stuff, and it wasn't until COVID that parents realized it.
I think a lot of the right tends to be comfortable with having representatives do things for them. Mm-hmm. I don't know if this is a feature of the right or just a bad habit that they've done for however many decades. We like to elect representatives and then forget all about it. Just go do your job now.
Yeah.
Or, hey, teacher, go teach my kid. Here's the money. Do a good job. I'll see you next year. I'll see you during the PTA meeting.
Right.
So the parents have had the bad habit of getting hands off, assuming everything's okay, and now I'm going to go focus on whatever adult things I'm doing. Whereas if you're homeschooling, you have to almost micromanage your child's growth. Maybe not micromanage, but I won't call it laziness, but it's a sort of, I don't need to, if I'm an adult and I have certain problems like at work or my relationship, whatever, I have to focus on a certain number of things per day. And my child's growth maybe is near the bottom of that list. Mm-hmm. But now they're realizing what happens when you don't pay attention to what your kid's learning. But the left, I won't even say the left anymore, just the ideological types rely on parents not investigating. Mm-hmm. And that's how you end up with creepers like, I don't want to mess up your algorithm stuff, but like creepers like talking to younger people and saying sketchy things and assuming the parents are just not involved in the kid's life.
Right.
And they tend to prey on kids who don't have active parents. And that's kind of how we end up with the mess of a whole generation being ideologically brainwashed, whatever you want to call it, hating their parents and all that stuff, which is ironic because when I was growing up, we used to go to church and youth group and stuff. And it was very much like, oh, I'm going to go learn about the Bible. I'm going to go learn about Jesus, yo. There's a cute girl. I hope I can hold her hand, man. Oh, man, don't tell your parents. Where we had the Sunday school stuff, youth group stuff, and that was relatively wholesome. And now the young people are going to like Marxist versions of youth group at church, where you got some creepy college professor, you know, with his sex club or something, like introducing kids to, I'm not even going to joke about this stuff. But yeah, creepy youth pastor energy, YouTubers who they fulfill the role of older, cool person who's going to teach you the ropes. And these are questions I'm too embarrassed to ask my parents. So I'm going to pretend to be anonymous online and ask questions that I want the answer to, but I'm too embarrassed to ask in real life.
Right.
There's a certain age where it can be called like the loss of innocence age, whatever that is, where you become maybe like a teenager and you just start asking questions about reality. How did I get here? What is life? What's the meaning of life? And like deep, hard questions, but you're embarrassed to ask. So you search on Google and then it's a slippery slope, which leads to kind of the muddy, dark thoughts that even adults wrestle with and don't have the answers to. But young people are not equipped to navigate those waters. Adults are not equipped to navigate those waters. Like we talked about the red light district and drugs and stuff. Those people in Amsterdam, they don't really know what they're doing there either. They're just kind of chasing impulses.
Right.
If a young person asked an adult, hey, why are you here? What are you doing? What are you chasing after? Every adult there would give them a different answer. But a young person, it's even more, it's a shame for them to get stuck in a sort of what's the meaning of life, and even adults don't have the answers. So what chance do I have now? But that's the question everybody wrestles with until the day they die. You can ask religious people, they'll have different answers. You can ask irreligious people. But anyway, that's a whole lot to dump on a young person. So I would rather be an adult that a young person in my life can come and ask these questions, and I would give my honest answer. And it's like, listen, it seems scary, but the real meaning of life is not to get too worried about these deep questions that no one knows the answer to. Focus on these things instead, and you can still worry about that stuff later. That would be my answer anyway.
Yeah.
But I worry about the people who stand in the way of young questioning types who want to genuinely know answers, but are too embarrassed to ask parents because maybe the parents would judge them. That would be unfortunate.
Yeah.
Why are you asking me about that? It's like, well,
But see, that's the, because I hear the arguments from, so I try to be somewhat fair most of the time.
Yeah.
You hear from people say like, well, what about the kids who are confused, or they'll say, what if they're gay? You know, the kids who may be trans. You know, if we are obligated to tell their parents what would happen, you know, and their parents take it out on their kids. And I just kind of feel like if you're to, and I say this as somebody who has certain things that he won't do because of the worst possible outcome. But if you were to have public policy purely based off of the worst possible outcome, when the more likely scenario is that nothing negative would come from it. So what I'm getting at is, from the teacher standpoint, and you're usually like true believers, progressive teachers, their argument would be, if I tell you as a father that your kid is trans, then you might go ahead and beat them and so on and so forth. But I'm just thinking, like, that's not most parents' reaction.
Yeah, the worst case scenario.
That's very much so the worst case. Could it happen? Sure, right? But that's not the worst case. That's not the likely scenario. Most parents would be concerned and try to see some sort of doctor or get some sort of professional help. They would do the complete opposite of that. So that's the part that's concerning for me is like, I understand if there's a kid that's confused and they confide in a teacher, but the teacher ultimately is if it's public school, they're a government employee.
Yeah.
And you're not their parent. And ultimately the parent is the one who gets to decide what happens to their child. Now, we have laws, like you can't just, throw your kids out the window and walk around and be like, well, I'm the parent, I can do whatever I want. So we have laws to protect kids. If you abuse your child, you can get your kids taken away, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
But I don't think we should have public policy geared towards that worse and unlikely scenario.
I think they're intentionally using that as a opportunity to pull kids away from parents.
Yeah.
The government wants to be the parent. We've heard even Biden talking about this all the time. The left does this. They've done this for 100 years, even since the USSR. They want to replace parents, and the state will become the new caretaker. And they pretend like we're being more compassionate to your kids. It's the same thing as your kid wants to eat nothing but candy and not healthy food, so I'm going to give them nothing but candy. and that will make the kid love me. But obviously there's those fables, I don't remember if it's Grimm's fairy tales or something, Hansel and Gretel. The witch wants to feed you candy so that she can eat you. We've heard that one 1,000 times. So if you got a teacher or adult person in your life that's not the parent that's saying, I'm going to just give you whatever you want, and that's what's best for you. I'm never going to say no to you. And obviously we know that if you do that too many times to a person psychologically, they're just going to go crazy.
Right.
To put it, in a dumb way. But the parent's job should be to be able to decide for the kid until they're 18 or beyond. This is what I think you should expose yourself to. This is what I think you should avoid. And then when you're an adult, you can decide what you want to expose yourself to. But my job is to make sure that you can become a strong adult so that I can almost work myself out of a job. I won't need to be your parent in the same way that I am now. When you're 18, you should be able to take care of yourself, and then you have to make decisions for yourself.
Right.
But in those formative years, the government or creeps want to step in and indoctrinate young people to normalize things that they want to be normalized, because you have to get them at a young age. They know that. But their goal is to change society and change norms that have been in place for hundreds or thousands of years, maybe, so that they can have their little utopia, whatever. But the problem is they're kind of in uncharted territory, and the mental state of these young people does not seem stable to me. When you ask them, what do you think about X, Y, and Z, or who's going to be informed at that age about sexual matters or identity matters? Like, maybe if they express themselves as trans, maybe they're just gay and they don't know how to explain that. Maybe it's easier to say I'm trans than I don't know. I'm assuming that for them it seems like an easier move. I don't know anything about this stuff. I actually knew someone growing up who, I shouldn't say too much, but they said they were trans, where it's like, you've always been kind of gay to me. So I'm like, but that's fine. Like, It's cool. I'm not judging you, but like, I don't know what you're trying to do here. It's kind of a swampy topic, I suppose. I'm not ready to talk about it right now. But I don't like that they're making decisions that will affect them for the rest of their lives. I don't need to necessarily get involved because it's not my business anyway, but I don't like, you got the mastectomy thing, the kids doing that stuff, and it's like, that's going to affect you for the rest of your life. I think it's a shame. It has nothing to do with me, but I think there should be legal, if you're going to sue a doctor for that, I do think a doctor needs to be aware that you can and should be sued if the person says, you tricked me into saying this. I was not able to make this decision.
Right.
So doctors need to second guess, is this going to bite me in the ass in 10 years? And then maybe they would be more careful when they do these gender reassignment stuff or the hormones. Who knows what the side effects of that are going to be.
Right.
I just don't, society-wise, I don't love the idea of people suffering for no reason. Why do this to young people when they're already so confused? And then there's the argument of, oh, do you want them to seppuku themselves? Because if you don't accept them for who they are, they're going to do that. And it's like, maybe there's a little bit of a gray area between those two things.
Right.
Maybe we can just talk to the young person. It's a case-by-case basis thing. I just don't like that the left is trying to approach this with such a broad brush that they don't even think about the repercussions for the next 10 years. They're worried about what can we do now, and then hopefully we'll have the utopia as long as we get rid of the people trying to stop us right now or silence them. But the left generally does not think long-term, I think by their nature. And the right thinks only long-term and not short-term, and that's why they keep losing.
Interesting. I would have thought the opposite.
You think?
Yeah, sometimes, or at least as of right now, because like everybody's wondering like, how did all this gender stuff, how did DEI, how did all this stuff happen? Like, I think some people think it just popped up one day and it was just there. And I'm like, no, this has been happening for a long time. Like this, what you're watching now has been the long-term strategy, right? It's just that you guys weren't paying attention. I'll include myself to some degree. Certain things I didn't realize that was happening, whether it's schools or colleges, or just generally things within media, entertainment.
They've always been there.
Yeah, it's been there, but it's increasing. And it was just like the past few years, especially with COVID, it just exploded. It went from being subtle to overt. And that's why I say, like, I don't even know where I lie in the political spectrum. Certain things I'm liberal on, certain things I'm kind of conservative on. But the people that we're talking about, they're not liberal. They're not liberal whatsoever. They're quite illiberal. So that's what I don't nitpick people who are on the right who say like liberalism this, liberalism that, because what they're complaining about is not liberalism. What they're complaining about is progressivism or Marxism.
Okay. I can see the distinction. So
Yeah.
a liberal would say, I disagree with you, but you can still talk.
Right.
Right. They want everyone to have a voice in this. So I can understand and respect that, being an artsy-fartsy type anyway. I want as little censorship as possible. I want everyone to have their opinions out there, even things I disagree with or find disgusting, things I agree with, just have it all out there, and then everyone can make the best decision for themselves. So the Marxist would say, I want my enemies to be silenced. And then the far right would also say, I want my enemies to be silenced.
Right.
So the same middle, I suppose.
Where the majority of us are.
I would assume, yeah.
Yeah. No,
But live
for
and
sure.
let live is not a very strong rallying cry, I guess. There's no, what do you call it, radical centrist? How can you be a radical moderate?
It's just, well, that's the thing. We're in this environment where where people feel like, I don't want to say you have to. People feel like you need to be radical in order to accomplish something. You know, this isn't like an anti-Trump thing, but like Trump, for example, I think people think that in order for you to win now that Trump won, in order for you to win, you have to be like Trump in order to win.
I see.
And I'm like, well, in many ways, like Trump is unique, but he's not something that we should advocate for. Like, just not, I'm saying like his behavior, his mannerisms, the stuff that he says, the stuff he talks about.
Yeah.
I mean, we should want someone with good, strong policies, similar to what Trump is talking about in many cases. But how about somebody with better temperament? You know, I would have no problem with a quote unquote stereotypical politician in demeanor.
Yeah.
With policy that benefits most people. I would have no problem with that. But there are people who think like, like when they talk about other presidential candidates, they're like, I don't know, he doesn't have the charisma. Like they're waiting for this guy to come out and start tap dancing and doing card tricks.
Yeah.
I was like, the person who should be running the country shouldn't be like an entertainer.
Yeah. Well, we're running into the problem of, I guess you can call it marketing.
Yeah.
Like, say you and I are doing a podcast right now, if you jumped across the table and started choking me, everyone would share it and watch it,
Right.
regardless of what we're talking about. But if we're calmly chilling and just talking about whatever, it's not share worthy, whatever. Some people are just gonna, and everyone should share this, by the way. But we're having a calm, rational discussion, and that's what we need. And I agree with you. I wish Trump was more chilled, but I don't think there's anything sexy about someone who's a moderate and calm and quiet. And it's not entertaining, and people want to be entertained. And the nature of memetics, if you want to call it that, is to be shocking.
Yeah.
Can you believe, and it's the genderqueer thing, can you believe what this book is showing? And they show pictures of it. So Trump is, he's got the virality.
Right.
And the people who get shared on YouTube and Twitter and everything are the ones who shout the loudest.
Bella, come here. Sit. See, I knew she would start freaking out because she started hearing the sounds outside.
That's right.
Sit. Relax. You're not gonna sit. You're sorry.
No, but yeah, the content and the actual behavior of the politician, they could have the best policies, but the game, unfortunately, of politics in America is who am I going to vote for? Who entertains me? Who do I remember? And it's a lot like, say, even dating back in the day. It's who's the hottest, not who am I going to be happy with 30 years from now. And the people who are unwise, which are a lot of people, unfortunately, they're like, oh, this person's really hot now, even though I can't stand their personality, so I may as well be with them. And I think that's short-term thinking, and unfortunately, we're all stuck in that short-term thinking. The ultimate politician right now is the one who gets the most talked about, not who has the best policies.
Right.
So we're stuck. Even I, talking about this now, I drew a stupid thing about Trump this morning because it was in the news, and I just thought of a funny joke. But I'm now sharing his brand out. Dog agrees. So I don't know. That's where, this is another topic, I guess, but I do think we're screwed in 24. I don't know what's going to happen. We can talk about this another time. What do you think?
See, Bella's she'll vote for anybody that gives her snacks.
How about pets?
And pets. Belly rubs too.
Ooh.
She's very easy to
Very
get her
sweet.
vote.
I don't mean to get off track. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. It's her fault.
We can have her. Let's interview her now. Go on.
All right, Bella, you gotta get down.
I'll stop being a
gotta
bad
get
guest.
No. It's her fault. It's your fault.
Bella for president.
Bella for president. No. We can't even have a discussion now. No, I was going to say that I think it's unfortunate that it's now. See, now I can't even concentrate. All right.
There's potential here, though. There's meme potential.
No, I think it's unfortunate that it's come down to we have to be entertained in order to get someone's vote or something like that. But you know what? I see someone like myself who's come from like nothing as far as being noticed. And I've basically put out, it sounds weird saying this, but I put out a brand because it's just who I am of being a moderate. And it's kind of like, yeah, there are a lot of people who agree with me and you kind of cross spectrums. So I have a lot of people who are anti-woke, but somewhat liberal who follow me. I have people who are conservative who follow me. And they agree with a good portion of what I'm saying because it's a very rational viewpoint. And you know what's funny? Many of the conservatives of today were liberals of yesteryear, and they believe in classical liberal values. And the liberals of today are just quiet. And they've been overshadowed by the fraction of progressives that exists, but the fraction of progressives that exist are in very powerful positions, and they're very extreme and very ideological. And unfortunately, as far as the Democrats go, they've bought in 100% into progressive ideology. You have Joe Biden confirming all the trans stuff, all the radical trans stuff. And it's not a anti-trans thing for me. Like, I don't care if you're trans. Like, live your life how you want to live it. It's what you mentioned before, wanting to give children surgeries, which they are doing, and even though they're trying to tell you that they're not doing.
Yeah.
And, exposing kids to graphic material. That's basically it. I'm pretty liberal on most things. So if you're a dude who wants to wear a dress, wear a dress. Because years ago, no one cared. There's always been people who cross-dress. There's always been people who they self-proclaimed as trans. And to be honest with you, I think I've only met one trans person in my life. Yet it dominates 80% of the conversation on Twitter. And it's very, I almost feel like some people like to go PSYOP. I don't like to say everything is PSYOP, but it goes as far as like saying it's definitely a distraction, because there are a number of things, like when we talk about our speech, laws that are trying to be passed to curtail our speech, going after, or even talking about going after the government for them trying to curtail our speech. The hearings that they had, the Twitter Files hearings, that was kind of important.
Yeah.
Not that many people were talking about it. Some people might share a video here and there, but not many people were talking about it. But yeah, we can have article after article, tweet after tweet, talking about how Dylan Mulvaney is not a woman. So I just kind of feel like, yeah, the fight's there, but I think you guys are beating a dead horse, because there's a lot of important things that are out there.
It reminds me of, there were some performances on some of the Grammys or something earlier this year where somebody dressed up as the devil or something. And
Yeah.
I don't remember what the details were. But
Sam Smith.
Maybe.
I think it was Sam
probably.
Smith, yeah.
And I don't remember what else they did besides dressing up like the devil, but there was a bunch of like notable things. And then the right was reporting on it as if this is something objectionable, and like, this is the left being the left. They've always done this, and they're always trying to get you to talk about how disgusting they are, and oh, this is evil, this is satanic. And it reminds me of when we were young in the 90s, and like they were trying to get Mortal Kombat banned and stuff like that because it's too violent. And that's the reason why Mortal Kombat became so well known, is they wouldn't stop talking about it. They wouldn't stop trying to censor it. Everybody wanted to know, what's this forbidden thing?
Yes.
So I never knew. I don't know who Sam Smith is. I don't know who most of these performers are. I don't listen to popular music to begin with. But the reason I hear anything about them is because the right is saying, oh, can you believe that dress they wore? Oh my gosh, that's too racy, whatever. But maybe the solution is in the problem, where we talked about earlier about like how Howard Stern, he stopped being edgy when he was allowed to say and do whatever he wants. Maybe the left should be allowed to run amok for a little while, and then we'll know where the line is in a few years. But unfortunately, there's a lot of parents who rightfully don't want their kids to be sacrificed to, like, yeah, maybe some kids, a generation of kids, need to be shown these horrific adult things, and then people will snap out of it and say, wow, that was really wrong. Maybe it's like I'm doing a lot of analogies, I'm sorry. It's like if I have to throw up and I'm resisting throwing up, I'm actually making it worse for myself. I should just throw up. So maybe we don't need to prolong the fight. Just let the left have, you want to be disgusting, and go ahead. And now everyone's going to just see, wow, you really are effed in the head. You really shouldn't be allowed to be around kids. And now we have the proof. So I'm just digging that out of my butt. I don't actually have a point to make, except, I don't know, maybe they should be allowed to, I don't know. Maybe I don't know. I don't have kids, so I can say that. It's easy for me to say that. I don't have to sacrifice my kids right now. But maybe it will become mundane when you do start seeing it. It's commonplace. And then they're like, what's the next thing that we're going to do? We've run out of things to do. Well, and then you can get like the Christians saying, no, it can get really biblical in the sense of like we're sacrificing children and they want to stop that stuff. It's kind of an endless. Do you ban something, but then you make it sexy? And then there's people who don't want to ban it, and now you have a fight, and now everyone's talking about it. Versus here's this quiet thing that's been happening, but if it's too quiet, then it can happen under the radar, and then it can also grow. So I see the argument for both sides, and that's why I'm never running for office. I have no solution except to try to poke fun at some of the things I find horrific and objectionable, and try to have a little laugh when you stare at the horror show that is humanity and how we keep screwing ourselves up. It's like, what can you really do except try to laugh about it? Maybe. Or try to have a little bubble of sweetness and innocence before the young person goes out into the world and realizes, like, oh, it's actually not this sweet little home. Home was like a dream, a beautiful dream. But when you go out into the world, there is no warmth. Everyone's out for themselves, and that's just the way it is. And you can't say that that's wrong necessarily. That's a whole other discussion.
Yeah, I was thinking. Because you said a lot there.
I'm sorry.
No. It's not a bad thing.
I blame the dog.
It is definitely Bella's fault. Yeah, it's trying to find that fine line between doing something about it, promoting it. Like, I don't think a lot of people understand like how like actual Satanists what they're actually doing, because all Satanists are, they just troll Christians, right?
I wouldn't be surprised if that was true.
Yeah, I ended up learning a little bit about the mindset of Satanists from a guy that I knew who happened to be a Satanist, and he kind of gave me like the breakdown, like the quick breakdown. Satanists are essentially like atheists. They don't believe that there's anything. However, what they're doing is trolling Christians, so they pretend that Satan is their God, so to speak. So because they do these things, it pisses off Christians, because Christians believe like they're really worshiping Satan, and they're not. See, Satan doesn't mean anything to them. They don't believe in anything.
That would make sense.
And so they're like, yeah, we're gonna put these robes on and bring Satan a statue. Oh yeah, we're praising Satan. Like, to them, this is just a statue. Satan is not a real thing. But they know that people are going to see them and get a reaction. But all they are, from my friend's explanation, and it seems to be sort of checking out, they're radical individualists. Relax. Jeez, Bella. But they're radical individualists who basically just want to piss off Christians. That was kind of I'm not saying it's a good or bad thing, but it just goes back to like the Sam Smith thing. They know that if he dresses up like Satan and dances around, that it pisses people off. Like, it gets a reaction.
It makes the news.
It's edgy. Yeah. And and they're always trying to do certain things that are edgy. Like Lil Nas X, right? Was first thing after he has his big song, next thing he does, he starts doing all like these symbolic Satan gestures and things like that. And I was like, well, where did that come from? Why is he doing that? Oh, because it's edgy.
Yeah, it's marketing.
It's marketing. It's all edgy for him to do. Do I think that he's a Satanist? No. Now, as someone who is a Christian, I think these people are playing with stuff that they don't realize that they're playing with.
Yeah.
But I understand like the motivation is to get a reaction. And I don't think the right understands that. And because they react to certain things in a certain way, like you say, it creates a Streisand effect. Sometimes it happens with the left. That country song that came out, like "Don't Try This in a Small Town," brought them to #1. I don't listen to country. I don't give a shit about country, to be honest with you. Yet now I know about it.
Yeah.
So they made this song, which seems, I guess, is an okay country song, made it shoot to #1 just stick it to the people who are complaining about it, because there's not much to really complain about.
Yeah.
So,
But we're witnessing a form of marketing that's taking advantage of social media. The left can be provoked and the right can be provoked. And all people are doing is complaining.
yes.
It doesn't really lead to any change. The song still exists. And basically we got played. If we signal boost something that we found objectionable, that we don't even care about, like I was telling you about Razor Fist that I was working with, he makes a great point that if you really don't care about something, or if you hate something, no, what does he say? The opposite of love isn't hate, it's indifference.
Right.
That's the quote. If you really don't care, just don't talk about it. It's going to vanish. But the reason Christians are upset, obviously, is because they believe Satan exists, and they believe, and children sacrificed, and Moloch and all that stuff that did happen throughout history. I wouldn't be surprised if a form of that is still happening today in a different form. And I would object to that, and I would want it to stop because it's horrifying. But if you really want it to stop, I think legislation is not probably the avenue. It's probably going to be changing people's hearts, and that's a lot harder, and that takes a lot more time.
Right. That takes getting involved in culture,
which the right is allergic to.
Yes.
I've been arguing with even Matt Walsh, or trying to, but he won't respond to me. I'm not special enough. But I would say the Matt Walsh type, where it's like they criticize things like anime and video games, and what they do is try to piss off people like me who grew up on it and who value culture and movies and books and what else? I said video games already. You have to engage and create culture if you want to win the culture war. But these are professional critics and pundits, whatever you want to call them, but they don't actually make stuff. So then you get an artist who comes along and is trying to make art for people to engage with, but they don't value art. And I'm like, I don't know how else to change people's minds except to create a story that you can... Oh my gosh, this is another rabbit hole. I'm sorry. But like, the reason stories exist is so that we don't have to have an experience. Like, I heard a story around a campfire. If I'm a caveman right now, my caveman friends are sitting around the campfire and they're like, bro, I saw a giant thing. Let's call it a bear. I'm going to invent a thing called a bear. I've never seen a bear. But he's like, I saw a bear. It just took my friend's head off. Don't go in those woods over there. And it's like, wow, that's a crazy story. I'm going to believe your story and not go in the woods, and then I won't die. So the reason storytelling exists is that you can give experience to other people through the medium of, say, speech or text or pictures on a wall or video games. And you can give people those experiences, which are valuable, and then they can learn from those experiences. I've never thrown the One Ring into the volcano of Mordor or whatever, but I enjoyed the story nonetheless, and I learned many important lessons. And that's why storytelling is important. And I hate when the right looks down on storytelling and thumbs their nose at it as if it's like juvenile or something. It is the oldest thing that humans have done since forever. Right. Since the caveman days around the campfire, and the right is just dropping the ball. And it drives me nuts. And I wish I could get out at a table with one of these like snooty pundit types. I keep talking about Matt Walsh. But like, man, I would like to just give you my opinions, Matt. You're wrong, man. And I'm going to tell you why you're wrong. And it drives me nuts that the right, like they say, it's for children. Storytelling is for children. Video games are for children. That's a whole other topic, I suppose. But if you want to win the culture war, it's been my message for months now, you have to create and engage with culture.
Right.
And the left has monopoly. It's like a game of King of the Hill where you're not even getting on the hill. You want your enemies to get off the hill, but then you don't take it. So of course your enemies are going to get back on the hill. So get engaged with culture, invest in culture would be my message to the right. Or don't complain when you lose it.
Right. No, you're absolutely right. So like when the Daily Wire creates a movie,
and I praise them for that. The Western.
There's a Western one, but there's the other one that was really good. It was
Not What Is a Woman?
No, not that one. It was a Run, Hide, Fight? I forgot.
I must have missed that
You
one.
must have missed that one. I always mess up the title. It was actually really, really good.
Oh, good.
And that's the type of movie, like, if I was to bring a family member in here and just have them watch the movie, they'll come out of it and they'll be like, that was a really good movie. They'd have no idea it was created by a conservative outlet. Have no idea.
Yeah.
But there's like small sprinkles of things that are in there that it's somewhat conservative.
Yeah.
And that's how it works. That's how you influence culture. Like you talk about anime. All these comics and anime strips, they all have different lessons in them. It's just that they don't like, because it's cartoon. So all of a sudden they're not supposed to like it. But there's lessons in it, and there are things that kids pick up, things that kids understand.
Yeah.
And anime, yes, it's viewed by adults and kids. But like you just mentioned South Park. South Park is mostly watched by adults.
Yeah.
And so like that's animated. So there's people just, you know what I think? If they don't like anime, then they say it's for kids. That's basically it. Because they wouldn't say South Park is for kids because it's cartoon.
Right.
But to go to your point, storytelling is extremely, extremely important, and it's how you influence culture. What I see too much is complaining about culture and having no alternative. What I see too much is not utilizing storytelling to get your point across, right? And most of my writings, I'm utilizing storytelling. Like my book is stories of my childhood. Stories are relatable. And I just see I see lots and lots of opportunities lost on the political right.
Big time.
By avoiding these things that are human, right? Humans understand stories.
Yeah.
You tell me a story, I can picture it, I can see it. I know someone who went through something like that. That's how you spread a message, right? You don't spread a message by saying, this is bad, this is good. No. Even the left doesn't do that.
No, it's too on the nose. It's
too
obvious.
on the nose, yes. It's very subtle. Like, for example, and not to say this is a left or right thing, but Will and Grace. People always say, you know what? Will and Grace was very pivotal when it comes to how we view gay people, because it showed two gay people in a positive light. They're just like me and you. They could be quirky. They could be,
that's fair.
So it gave an opportunity to show something in a positive light, and that's what they wanted to do. And over time, that kind of shifted, and it's kind of like, they're just people. Like whatever. I don't necessarily agree with. I'm not gay.
You watch it and you're persuaded. Oh, they are normal, just like me. They have my problems every day. They go to the grocery store.
Same thing with the Cosby Show. For a lot of people, the Cosby Show was probably their first experience of watching like a black family being portrayed in a way that seemed relatable for people who are not black.
That's interesting.
And I'm like, yeah, they didn't have to beat you over the head and saying black people are just like you. They just showed you a black family.
Yeah.
Right? And that's how you influence. You don't influence by saying complaint, nothing to replace it, just complaint.
Yeah. Or just allegorical stories where it's very obvious that this is, George walked along the road of struggle and he climbed the tower of faith.
Yes.
It's too on the nose.
Yeah. But
the building blocks of a story are like character, plot. You're introduced to these people and maybe it's like a cake or something. The meat of the cake is maybe the thesis, but then there's all this nice frosting and decorations on top. It's very palatable. Right. You can't just give someone medicine or they don't want to take it. So you would smuggle in your thesis into the story, but the people are distracted by, I'm just having a great time. Mm-hmm. And then later when they think about it, it's like, or even the Bible stories, let's say. One of the more ancient stories, or I won't, well, maybe I shouldn't, or Greek myths, I'm Greek, so like, that time that Zeus did X, Y, and Z, so be sure not to be like Zeus because he screwed up real bad, or here's a story about this lady who opened a box and her name is Pandora. Don't be like Pandora. So the reason we remember the stories is because by memory, we remember the character and their adventure, and oh yeah, there's a lesson to be learned. There's a moral there. Biblical stories are similar enough. It's like the oldest human stories, the ones that were passed down verbally, the reason we remember them is because we remember the characters and the adventure they went along, and then you can kind of improvise what happened and the story changes like a game of telephone over time. And then eventually it was written down. But the core of all human storytelling is I have a lesson I want to pass on to somebody around the campfire. I'm going to either tell you the story or I'm going to draw you a picture so you remember it. I saw some gazelles, the oldest cave paintings that are in France or something. And it's like a bunch of animals in a cave or something, and they were drawn out of ash or something like that. And the reason I drew them is so that even if I'm dead, you can still get the picture, or hieroglyphics are just comics. And so when people can't speak over time, you would write it down. And before even language, the written language was, before written language existed, pictures existed. So people learned how to draw pictures. But that's the reason those stories have endured over thousands of years. Characters, plots, lessons. And we need to continue doing that today, or else we're going to lose the ability to pass on our memes in the most literal sense. Dawkins? Yeah. Yeah, to pass on our ideological morality, whatever, to the next generation. I need to make an anime because people like to watch anime. It's fun, the colors, and it's fun to watch. But there's also a point. Same with movies, music. It has to be enjoyable. I don't listen to country music either. So if you want to tell me about try that in a small town, you would have to dress it up in a form that I want to consume.
Right.
So conservatives, if they want to start making progress, they need to start creating and not thumbing their nose at the arts. I don't know if that will change, but they don't seem interested. So if someone like me has been struggling for so long, granted I'm an asshole, so who would hire me? But it's been very hard for someone like me to find work in the industries. And I'm not sure why. So that's weird. I don't know what the solution is, but I assume by the time we are old men, the next generation will be in better shape to tell the stories that matter, probably. So we're going to be hungry, but that's okay.
Yeah. Well, I hope that's the case. I try to be optimistic about the future. And, like we were talking about young people, I think they're just looking for purpose. But I think much of what we're seeing is a trend. I think over time, balance will be restored. I don't think this whole woke thing is going to affect our culture like it already is. But I don't think it's going to go in full swing like people think. I think there are already signs of it regressing.
It's kind of self-destructive.
Yeah, exactly. Because the way I see it is most people don't believe it. Now, you don't need most people to believe something for culture to shift. But I think for something like this is so intrusive, you kind of need a significant portion of the population. But what I'm seeing is you have a significant portion of the people who are in power who believe this. And so it feels like it's forced upon rather than adapted to, if that makes sense.
Well, they're certainly using it to farm votes. I don't know if they really care, because, how many years before they got elected, Biden and even Obama was saying they're against gay marriage and stuff?
Yeah.
However many years before they got in. And then they changed their tune. So are they farming votes? Do they really care about any of this? Is there a deep state that doesn't care about any of this because they just want to collect money? And what is money, really? Do they even care about money? These are hyper deep questions I don't know the answer to. Like, what are they really after? Votes, power, influence, for whatever reason. And as the WEF stuff keeps climbing, and that is the thing I'm most concerned about. The culture war, I think, is just a byproduct there is some kind of power struggle behind all this.
Yeah.
I think we saw a little bit of it when they didn't want Trump in office.
I think
He interrupted it.
A class war.
Maybe.
I think that's ultimately what it is.
Secret aristocrats.
Well, not so secret anymore.
Not anymore, no.
Global. That's what the WEF
Something,
represents. You know.
The kings and queens of 400 years ago are back.
Yes.
But they don't wear crowns anymore.
No.
Or they live in castles, but we never see them. We don't know where they live.
They're more discreet.
I believe that.
Yeah.
That's scary. Like the eyes wide shut people.
Yeah.
If you know they exist, it's too late for you. God. See, yeah, that scares the hell out of me.
Oh man.
But that's why I just want to go to the beach and have a nice time. And
Yes. And in Jersey, we have beaches.
yeah,
Not the best beaches, but we have them.
these things are beyond the common man, I think. Really, if you were to ask me what's the point of all this, I just want to, like, what's my goal as a person? I just want to make fun art, be remembered, entertain people, draw good pictures, a little bit of the Van Gogh thing, you know, except without the crazy end. You know, just have my name out there. Everybody, like you're writing your books, I'm sure you want to be remembered as a writer,
Yeah.
a little bit of influencer, whatever. We all have our goals. I don't think we can even touch whatever this secret aristocracy is. We can't even touch it. So I wouldn't worry about it too much.
Well, we can prepare our children for what may be coming.
I don't even know what that would look like. Like things like facial recognition software and like the complete collapse of currencies all over the world and the loss of all rights. You can't even own property, all that stuff that they're talking about. If that's the future, how do you even prepare? Like grandson, believe it or not, I used to be able to go to the grocery store and pay with this thing called cash. And
not anymore.
I don't know. That's unfortunate.
Well, I'm not to minimize it. The way I see the World Economic Forum, I kind of see it as a upper class get together talking about their dreams. Will it happen? Maybe some of it. All of it? No. But to be honest with you, over the pandemic, I started seeing the United States as like the last bastion, which is why it feels like they're going so hard. Because like Europe, they just
Australia, yeah.
They just comply.
Lockdown.
They have this juggernaut of an EU
Yeah.
that forces people to do certain things, and they've fallen in love to a degree, or just they don't have the willpower to fight against something like that. But here, like if people want to say we're 50-50,
Yeah.
that's a really good combination right there to keep things battling so we don't have certain things to happen.
That's a good point.
And that's why I kind of feel like, and that's why so many people who don't live in the United States, they follow American politics, because they say whatever the United States does eventually comes here. And so that's why they feel so invested in our politics, in our culture, because the dumb shit that we come up with, like when Black Lives Matter took off in 2020, they imported it into the UK and it made no sense.
Yes.
It's like, we have to stop the shooting of unarmed black people. They're like, the cops don't have guns. Like, what are you talking about? Like, nobody's being shot.
That's a good point.
And so it's stuff like that where I think like America has a lot more on its shoulders than people realize. And you start realizing it once you leave the country or once you talk to people from other countries and how they all, like I used to travel and bounce around Europe and I would talk politics with people from all over the world, Australians, Western Europeans, you name it. They all know what's going on here. I don't know dick about their country. I don't know nothing about their politics, and they don't even really care that much about their politics, which isn't necessarily good. But they focus on ours because one, ours is more entertaining, and two, ours is more pivotal. It's like we're like this cultural outside force that if we do something crazy, they might get sprinkles of it coming to their end of the world. relatively soon. So I that's why I'm like, will the World Economic Forum accomplish all these things? They'll accomplish a lot if the United States fails to push back.
Well, they might succeed in those countries, but here, like, say, as long as we have things like free speech, where I can jump on Twitter, they tried to take over Twitter, and for a while they had control of it, where I can just tell any politician to go fuck themselves.
Right.
And I can be as obnoxious with my comics as possible, like pushing it to the absolute limit where I'm going to get banned. But the reason I'm doing that is to exercise my rights. If I don't use it, then I may as well not have them.
Right.
We have to be rude. We have to say, even as Americans, we have to learn how to use guns and stuff like that. Not because I expect there to be a civil war or something, but because I have the right to use them, I need to exercise it. Because if you don't exercise it, you might lose it like a muscle or something like that. I have to get into the public space and shout and be rude. And Europeans can see me doing that. And it's like, wow, that guy's crazy. But at least he's saying something. Whereas in some countries, in say, I don't know, Ireland, whatever those, the UK, you can't say half the stuff we're saying. You'd get a knock on your door and the police are like, hey, you were rude to a trans person. So what? Here it's like, so what? I was rude to somebody, wear a helmet.
Right.
Someone can be rude to me. And then it's like, well, I can't do anything to stop you. And that's the way it should be. And I can understand how someone in the EU or Asia or something would be jealous of that. China obviously is like the hellscape of like, you can't say or do anything. There was that meme of some guy like having to smile to like, some subway door wasn't opening unless he smiled at the camera or something. Facial recognition software, all that stuff. But yeah, it's true. They're trying to break in here in the States, but at least we're assholes enough to say, I'm going to be rude on purpose, even though I don't want to be, just to show you that you can't do anything about it.
Right.
And I think COVID was the perfect excuse of like, I'm not getting vaccinated. I announced I'm not getting vaccinated. I also announced I'm not wearing a mask anymore. What are you going to do about it? And it was like a dare. Like, we're standing now, here's the line. I was telling Governor Murphy, like, he wasn't paying attention, but I was like, fuck you, you horse-faced son of a bitch. Come get me. Do something about it. And I don't think he cared. But the point being is like, I have to say it out loud and put myself in the public. I have to show people that I'm willing to announce that I'm not vaccinated and I'm not going to. Because if I don't, then we're going to end up like Europe. And then, like, I didn't know that the vaccine was fucked up and it would like hurt people. But I had a suspicion. Because I guess I come from immigrant parents or something like that. And a lot of like Spanish and even black families, I think, have the same fear of the medical industry or something. I think just because we come from cultures where it's like we don't trust the machine, whatever that is.
Right.
I just don't. So I didn't want to take the risk. But I have the right to not take the risk. And I need to show everyone around me that it's okay. And then now people are getting like legitimately sick from the vaccines. And, you know, what's his name? LeBron's son or something like that. I can't prove. Or Jamie Foxx or something. He turned white for some reason. But like, what the hell happened to these people? And all it took, I hesitate to say this, all it took was me to be an asshole and say, I'm not doing it. And then I compared it to the Anne Frank thing, where there's all these people who were saying, I would have put Anne Frank in my attic. And they sincerely believed that. But then in the next breath, they wanted to report their neighbors for not wearing a mask outside.
Yeah.
And I'm like, you were going to report everybody for not getting a vaccine. You would have reported Anne Frank, dude.
Yeah.
You're not a good person.
Most people comply. A lot of people think
yeah.
that they're really, really good people who would do the right thing. But most people, when faced with the option of punishment, death, imprisonment,
or compliance,
or comply, they'll go with comply. They all think there'll be that one guy who had his arms folded when Hitler was giving a speech.
Yeah, he got liquidated.
Right.
And let's be honest, we would have been liquidated probably.
Yeah.
If they had any teeth. But at least in America, you have the legal right to be an asshole.
All right.
For now.
All right, that's enough.
But man, it's like, speak up now, because Peterson warns people about this, speak up now, because if you don't, the end result 5-10 years from now, you won't, not only will you not be allowed to speak, if you do, you'll be thrown onto a train or something. This happened in the USSR, it happened in other countries, China, whatever. At least in America, I want to be able to say, I tried and I said what I had to say. If we end up on a train somewhere, God forbid, at least I tried to stop it. Right. In my own little way, I spoke up. But like, what's the alternative? Total compliance, giving up our guns, giving up our free speech. We know what happens to countries that allow that. Right. So I, a doofus from New Jersey who grew up, I have a very dumb education. I'm not a smart guy. At least I'm like, whatever I can do in my own little circle, if yelling and drawing stupid pictures is all I can do, at least I have a clear conscience about it.
Right.
God forbid it gets worse.
Let's hope not. George, we'll end here, but I appreciate you coming over to my home.
It was my pleasure, man.
And sitting down with me and meeting again and talking.
Anytime.
Yeah, man. We got to do this again without the cameras.
Anytime.
But thank you. I do appreciate it.
Thanks for the invitation. I hope you guys enjoy it. Share it.
Share it.
He should reach across the table and try to attack me. You can like Photoshop yourself attacking me.
That's right.
Or the dog attacking me.
The dog. We'll get Bella. We'll get Bella to attack. See?
You should cut it right there.
Yeah, cut it right here. All right, man.
All right.
Thank you.
My pleasure.